In the midst of chaotic traffic, a pregnant woman goes into labor on the cold city pavement. When all seems lost, a 7-year-old girl emerges from the crowd and takes control of the situation. She delivers the baby with precision, saves both mother and child, and goes back to selling candy as if nothing had happened. That child, the daughter of a deceased doctor, was about to change the world with a legacy no one expected. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The December morning in Manhattan was brutally cold, with temperatures plummeting to near-record lows. Fifth Avenue sparkled with holiday decorations, but the festive atmosphere did nothing to warm the air that cut like glass through the crowds of holiday shoppers and office workers rushing to their destinations. Olivia Carter clutched her husband's arm as they navigated through the sea of people. At 8.5 months pregnant, she had insisted on this final shopping trip before their baby arrived. Daniel Carter, CEO of Carter Pharmaceuticals and one of New York's most influential businessmen, had reluctantly agreed, though he'd insisted on taking a rare morning off to accompany her. "Are you sure you're feeling okay?" Daniel asked for the third time that hour, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. His steel-gray eyes, usually sharp and calculating in boardroom meetings, were soft with concern. "I'm fine, Daniel," Olivia reassured him, patting her round belly. "The doctor said walking is good for me. Besides, I wanted to find those special Christmas ornaments for the nursery." Daniel nodded, but his worried expression remained. At 42, he had never expected to become a father. After losing his first wife, Rebecca, in a tragic accident 5 years earlier, he had closed himself off from the possibility of a new family. Meeting Olivia had changed everything, though the pregnancy had stirred up old fears he thought he'd buried. As they waited at a crowded intersection for the light to change, Olivia suddenly gasped and doubled over. "Olivia!" Daniel's voice rose with alarm. "What's wrong?" "I think—" She broke off, her face contorting in pain. "Oh God, Daniel, I think the baby's coming." "But it's too early," he said, panic rising in his voice. "We still have 2 weeks." Another contraction hit, stronger than the first, causing Olivia to cry out and sink to her knees on the frozen sidewalk. Daniel immediately knelt beside her, one arm around her shoulders while fumbling for his phone with his free hand. "Someone call an ambulance!" he shouted to the crowd that had begun to gather. A young man in a business suit was already on his phone, nodding to Daniel as he spoke urgently to the 911 operator. "They're sending an ambulance," the man called out, "but there's a major accident on Broadway. They said it might take time." Olivia moaned, clutching Daniel's hand with surprising strength. "The contractions are coming too fast," she gasped. "Daniel, I don't think I can wait." The crowd around them grew, but no one stepped forward to help. Some filmed with their phones, others whispered amongst themselves, and a few looked away uncomfortably. Daniel felt a surge of anger at their helplessness, followed quickly by his own sense of inadequacy. He was a man who controlled billion-dollar deals and commanded a corporate empire. Yet he was utterly powerless to help his wife in this moment. "Is there a doctor?" he pleaded, looking desperately around at the sea of faces. "Please, we need medical help." The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling through it. No one responded. Olivia cried out again as another contraction hit, more powerful than the last. "The baby's coming now," she sobbed, her face pale with pain and fear. Just as desperation threatened to overwhelm Daniel, the crowd parted, and a small figure pushed through. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, wearing a worn red parka and carrying a cardboard box filled with handmade candy, approached with determined steps. "Please stay calm," the child announced with startling authority. "I can help." The crowd's reaction was immediate, nervous laughter and disbelieving looks. Daniel himself felt a flash of irritation at what seemed like a cruel joke. "Please," he began, trying to keep his voice gentle despite his frustration. "This is serious. My wife needs—" "Your wife needs immediate medical attention," the girl interrupted, setting down her box of candy. "She's in active labor, and from the frequency of her contractions, there's no time to wait for an ambulance." The certainty in the child's voice made Daniel pause. She knelt beside Olivia with surprising confidence, her small face serious and focused. Up close, Daniel noticed her extraordinary eyes, deep blue and unnervingly intelligent, filled with a calm purpose that seemed impossible for her age. "My name is Lily Thompson," she said, addressing Olivia directly now. "I'm going to help you deliver your baby. First, We need to make you more comfortable and check how far along you are." Before Daniel could protest, Lily was giving clear, precise instructions to the crowd. "I need clean cloth, scarves, handkerchiefs, anything. Hand sanitizer if anyone has it. And someone needs to call the ambulance again and tell them this is now an emergency delivery in progress." To Daniel's amazement, people began responding, handing over scarves and tissues. Someone produced a travel-sized bottle of hand sanitizer, which Lily applied thoroughly to her small hands. "Sir," she said, turning to Daniel, "I need your coat to keep the baby warm when it arrives." Daniel removed his cashmere overcoat without hesitation, watching in stunned silence as this child transformed the chaotic scene into an organized emergency response. Lily spoke softly to Olivia, guiding her breathing through contractions while checking her progress with a clinical detachment that seemed surreal coming from a child. She instructed 2 women from the crowd to hold up coats as a makeshift privacy screen. "The baby's crowning," Lily announced after a particularly intense contraction. "Mrs. Carter, on the next contraction I need you to push." Daniel held Olivia's hand, his mind struggling to process what was happening. This child spoke with the knowledge and confidence of a trained medical professional. How was this possible? "Who taught you to do this?" he asked Lily as she prepared for the delivery. Without looking up, Lily replied, "My mother. She was a doctor. Before she got sick, she taught me everything she could." Another contraction came, and Olivia pushed, her cry echoing off the tall buildings surrounding them. The crowd had grown silent, the only sounds Olivia's labored breathing and Lily's calm, steady instructions. "Again," Lily directed. "Push now." Olivia bore down with all her strength. Daniel watched in awe as Lily's small hands worked with precision, guiding the baby's head as it emerged. "One more big push," Lily encouraged. "The shoulders are next, and then it will be easier." With a final, tremendous effort, Olivia pushed, and moments later a newborn's cry pierced the winter air. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause as Lily efficiently cleared the baby's airways and wrapped the tiny form in Daniel's coat. "Congratulations," Lily said, her serious expression breaking into a brief smile as she placed the squirming bundle in Olivia's arms. "You have a healthy baby boy." Daniel stared at the child who had just delivered his son. There was something hauntingly familiar about her, something in those deep blue eyes that stirred a distant memory. Before he could place it, the wail of approaching sirens announced the ambulance's arrival. As paramedics took over, Lily quietly gathered her scattered candy back into the cardboard box. Daniel reached out and caught her small arm before she could disappear into the crowd. "Wait," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to thank you. You saved my wife and son. Please tell me how to find you." Lily looked up at him with those strangely familiar eyes. "I live at Pine Street Orphanage in the East Village," she said simply. "But you don't have to find me, Mr. Carter. I'm glad I could help." As the paramedics loaded Olivia and the baby into the ambulance, Daniel watched the small figure in the red parka walking away, candy box under her arm. Something about her struck him deeply, a sense of connection he couldn't explain. In that moment, as snow began to fall softly around them, Daniel Carter knew with absolute certainty that his life had changed irrevocably, and not just because of his newborn son. 3 days later, Daniel stood in the hospital room, watching Olivia sleep peacefully beside their son's bassinet. The doctors had been amazed at how well both mother and baby had fared, despite the unusual circumstances of the birth. Whoever assisted with the delivery knew exactly what they were doing, the attending physician had remarked. Professional-level care, from what I can tell. Daniel hadn't been able to get the girl, Lily, out of his mind. Those eyes, the calm confidence beyond her years, the clinical precision with which she'd handled the emergency. There was something about her that nagged at him, some connection he couldn't quite place. His assistant, Margaret, knocked softly and entered the room with a folder. "I have the information you requested, Mr. Carter," she whispered, mindful of Olivia's rest. Daniel nodded and stepped into the hallway. "What did you find out about Pine Street Orphanage?" Margaret's expression was troubled. "It's not good, sir. The facility is severely underfunded. It's scheduled for closure next month due to budget cuts. The children will be dispersed to various state facilities." Daniel frowned. "And the girl, Lily Thompson, what about her background?" "That's where it gets interesting," Margaret said, opening the folder. "Lily Thompson, age 7. Mother was Dr. Sarah Thompson. former head of emergency medicine at Manhattan Memorial, father unknown. Dr. Thompson passed away from advanced pancreatic cancer 2 years ago, and Lily has been at Pine Street ever since. Daniel felt his heart stop. Did you say Sarah Thompson? From Manhattan Memorial? Margaret nodded. Yes, sir. Apparently, she was quite renowned in her field before her illness. The connection Daniel had been struggling to make suddenly crystallized with painful clarity. Dr. Sarah Thompson, the emergency physician who had worked desperately to save Rebecca after the accident 5 years ago. He remembered the dedicated doctor with the striking blue eyes who had come to him afterward, still in blood-stained scrubs, to express her personal condolences and profound regret that they hadn't been able to save his wife. I need to go to that orphanage, Daniel said abruptly. Today. Sir, you should be here with your family, Margaret protested. Olivia will understand, Daniel replied, glancing back at the hospital room where his wife and son slept. This is important. Something I need to do. 2 hours later, Daniel stood in the dingy reception area of Pine Street Orphanage. The building was old, with peeling paint and the distinct smell of institutional disinfectant. A harried-looking woman in her 50s introduced herself as Mrs. Winters, the facility director. Mr. Carter, she said, clearly impressed by his unexpected visit. This is quite unusual. How can I help you? I'm looking for a child who lives here. Lily Thompson. Mrs. Winters' expression changed subtly. Lily? May I ask what your interest in her is? Daniel explained the circumstances of his son's birth, watching as the woman's eyes widened in surprise. That does sound like our Lily, Mrs. Winters said with a sigh. She's an unusual child, brilliant beyond her years, especially in medical matters. Her mother made sure of that. I'd like to speak with her if possible, Daniel said. Mrs. Winters hesitated. Lily doesn't really connect with visitors. She spends most of her time reading in the library or practicing medical procedures on her dolls, but I can take you to her. As they walked through the orphanage, Daniel took in the faded surroundings. The building was clean but worn, with outdated furniture and facilities that had seen better days. Children peered curiously at him from doorways and common areas, their clothes clean but obviously second-hand. Here we are, Mrs. Winters said, stopping outside a small room. This is our library, though that's a rather grand name for it. Lily's usually here. Daniel stepped into the modest room lined with sagging bookshelves. Seated at a small table in the corner was Lily, her head bent over a thick medical textbook that seemed comically large in front of her small frame. She wore faded jeans and a too large sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Lily, Mrs. Winters called softly, you have a visitor. The child looked up and Daniel was struck again by those remarkable blue eyes, Sarah Thompson's eyes without a doubt. Recognition flickered across her face. Mr. Carter, she said calmly, closing her book. How are Mrs. Carter and the baby? They're both doing very well, thanks to you, Daniel replied, approaching her table. The doctor said you provided expert care. Lily nodded matter-of-factly. I applied standard emergency delivery protocols. The positioning was favorable, and your wife was healthy and strong. Daniel glanced at Mrs. Winters, who shrugged as if to say, see what I mean? May I sit? Daniel asked, gesturing to the chair across from Lily. Of course, she replied with the formal politeness of someone much older. As Mrs. Winters excused herself, Daniel studied the girl more carefully. Despite her composed demeanor, she was undeniably a child, small, with the rounded cheeks of childhood and fingernails bitten to the quick, betraying an anxiety her calm voice concealed. I knew your mother, Daniel said gently. Dr. Sarah Thompson, she was an extraordinary physician. Something flickered in Lily's eyes, surprise followed by a flash of pain quickly controlled. You knew my mum? Daniel nodded. 5 years ago, she treated someone very important to me. My first wife, Rebecca, after an accident. Your mother did everything she could to save her. But she couldn't, Lily said quietly, a statement rather than a question. No, Daniel confirmed. But she tried harder than anyone I've ever seen. She came to me afterward, personally. I never forgot that. Lily looked down at her book, running a small finger along the page edge. Mom always said that sometimes medicine fails, but compassion never should. The simple statement, delivered in the child's voice, but carrying the weight of profound wisdom, struck Daniel deeply. It was exactly the kind of thing Sarah Thompson had said to him that terrible night 5 years ago. "Your mother taught you medicine?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Lily nodded, a hint of pride breaking through her reserved demeanor. When she got sick, she knew she didn't have much time. She said her knowledge shouldn't die with her, so every day after school, and all weekend, and during her treatments, she taught me. Anatomy, physiology, emergency procedures, diagnostics. We turned it into games sometimes. And after she was gone, you continued learning on your own. "I have to," Lily said simply. "I promised her I would. The public library has a medical section, and sometimes the nurses at the free clinic let me read their textbooks if I help organize their supply closet." Daniel was silent for a moment, absorbing the remarkable determination of this 7-year-old girl. Her talent had saved his wife and child, a life for a life, as if the universe had created a perfect circle of connection between them. "Lily, what do you want to do when you grow up?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "I'm going to be a doctor," she replied without hesitation. "Not just any doctor. I'm going to be the kind of doctor who helps people who don't have anyone else to help them, like my mom did." Daniel nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "And what if I told you that I might be able to help you with that goal?" Lily regarded him with cautious interest. "What do you mean?" "I run a pharmaceutical company," Daniel explained. "We have research facilities, training programs, connections to the best medical institutions in the country. What if we created a special program for exceptionally gifted children like you? Children who have medical knowledge and aptitude far beyond their years." For the first time since he'd met her, Lily looked fully like the child she was, her eyes widening with hope and excitement before she carefully controlled her expression again. "Would that even be allowed?" she asked practically. "Mrs. Winters says I can't volunteer at the clinic until I'm at least 12, and even then I can only observe." "There would be challenges," Daniel acknowledged. "Legal issues, ethical considerations, but I have resources and influence. If anyone can make it happen, I can." Lily studied him intently, as if assessing his sincerity. "Why would you do that for me, Mr. Carter?" Daniel met her gaze directly. "Because you saved my family when no one else could. Because your mother tried to save mine. Because talent like yours shouldn't wait in a library until you're old enough to use it. And because I think your mother would want this for you." For a moment, Lily's composure cracked, and Daniel saw the vulnerable child beneath, a girl who had lost her mother, her home, and her purpose all at once. Then she straightened her shoulders and extended her small hand across the table. "I think that's a fair assessment, Mr. Carter," she said formally, though her voice trembled slightly. "I accept your proposal." As Daniel shook her tiny hand, sealing their unlikely partnership, he felt a sense of rightness settle over him. In helping this extraordinary child fulfill her potential, perhaps he could finally put to rest the ghosts of his past and embrace the future that awaited him with Olivia and their newborn son. What neither of them could possibly anticipate was how their simple agreement, made in a forgotten corner of a failing orphanage, would ultimately change the face of medicine in America, and how many lives would be transformed by what they were about to build together. 6 months later, Daniel stood at the podium in the gleaming atrium of the newly established Carter Institute for Gifted Medical Education. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, illuminating the state-of-the-art facility that had been constructed with remarkable speed, the result of Daniel's influence, virtually unlimited funding, and a team of architects and builders working around the clock. "Today marks the beginning of a revolutionary approach to medical education," Daniel addressed the small gathering of carefully selected guests, medical professionals, educators, legal experts, and a handful of journalists from prestigious publications who had agreed to embargo their stories until the program was established. "We are recognizing that exceptional talent doesn't always follow conventional timelines." From her seat in the front row, Olivia cradled their infant son, Michael, while giving Daniel an encouraging smile. Beside her sat Lily, looking almost unrecognizable from the girl Daniel had met at Pine Street Orphanage. Her hair was neatly styled, and she wore a simple but elegant blue dress that matched her eyes. More significantly, the wariness that had shadowed her expression had given way to quiet confidence. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of activity. Daniel had not only established the institute, but had also become Lily's legal guardian. a process expedited by his connections and the imminent closure of Pine Street. Lily now lived in a suite adjacent to the Carter family penthouse with a live-in caretaker who oversaw her non-academic needs while Daniel and Olivia focused on building the institute and raising baby Michael. We've assembled a team of the country's finest medical educators, child psychologists and ethicists, Daniel continued, gesturing to the group seated on the stage behind him. Together they've designed a curriculum that nurtures exceptional medical talent while ensuring the emotional and developmental well-being of our young students. The institute had faced significant challenges even before opening its doors. Medical boards questioned the legality of training children. Child welfare organizations expressed concerns about exploitation, and competitors whispered that Daniel Carter had lost his mind following the dramatic birth of his son. Daniel had anticipated the resistance and prepared accordingly. The institute wouldn't grant medical degrees or certifications. That would come later, through traditional channels when the students reached appropriate ages. Instead, it would provide specialized education and supervised practical experience that would give these extraordinary children a foundation unlike any other. "I'd like to introduce our first student," Daniel said, "whose remarkable actions inspired this entire endeavor. Lily Thompson, would you please join me?" Lily rose gracefully from her seat and climbed the steps to the podium. Though still small for her age, she carried herself with poise that commanded attention. Daniel stepped aside, allowing her to address the audience. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," Lily began, her clear voice carrying through the atrium. "I'm honored to be the first student at this institute, though I hope I won't be the only one for long." A ripple of appreciative laughter moved through the audience. Even the most skeptical observers couldn't help but be charmed by her articulate delivery. "My mother was Dr. Sarah Thompson," Lily continued. "When she became ill, she knew she wouldn't see me grow up or go to medical school, so she did something extraordinary. She compressed years of medical education into the months we had left together." The room grew silent, captivated by this unusual child and her story. "Some people think children shouldn't learn advanced medicine," Lily said, looking directly at several of the medical board representatives in the audience. "They worry we'll be traumatized or that we're missing out on childhood. But for me, medicine isn't traumatic. It's my connection to my mother. And learning to help others isn't missing childhood. It's finding purpose." Dr. Eleanor Winters, a prominent pediatric psychologist who had initially opposed the institute, but now served as its chief psychological advisor, nodded in agreement. Her extensive evaluations of Lily had been instrumental in designing the program's approach to balancing education with emotional development. "The Carter Institute isn't about pushing children to grow up too fast," Lily explained. "It's about not holding them back when they're ready to move forward. It's about recognizing that gifts come in all ages, and sometimes the person who can save your life might be someone you'd never expect." As Lily concluded her remarks to enthusiastic applause, Daniel returned to the podium. "Thank you, Lily. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now accepting applications for our inaugural class. We expect to select 5 additional students between the ages of 7 and 12 who demonstrate exceptional aptitude and genuine calling for medicine." The press conference continued with questions from the audience, most directed at the team of experts who explained the rigorous selection process, psychological safeguards and legal frameworks that had been established. Throughout it all, Lily remained on stage, answering the occasional question with remarkable composure for a child her age. Afterward, as the guests mingled during a reception in the Institute's expansive lobby, Dr. James Morrison, the former dean of Harvard Medical School who had agreed to serve as the Institute's academic director, approached Daniel. "I was skeptical when you first contacted me, Carter," Morrison admitted, sipping his sparkling water. "Thought it might be some rich man's vanity project. But after working with Lily these past few months and helping design this curriculum," he shook his head in amazement, "this could genuinely revolutionize how we think about medical education." "That's the goal," Daniel replied, "though we'll need to navigate significant opposition." Morrison nodded toward the far corner of the room, where a cluster of stern-faced individuals stood apart from the celebratory atmosphere. Like them, Daniel recognized Gerald Whitman, the commissioner of the State Medical Board, deep in conversation with Senator Eleanor Preston, a vocal critic of the Institute who had already called for congressional hearings on what she termed the exploitation of gifted children. They're the most vocal opponents, Daniel acknowledged, but not the most dangerous. Oh? Morrison raised an eyebrow. The most dangerous are the pharmaceutical competitors and medical institutions that fear will disrupt their comfortable monopoly on how medicine is taught and practiced, Daniel explained. They've already launched a coordinated campaign to discredit us, claiming we're endangering children for publicity. Morrison frowned. They haven't met Lily, clearly. That child has more natural aptitude for medicine than half the residents I've trained. Across the room, Lily was engaged in animated conversation with Dr. Amelia Chen, the brilliant neurosurgeon who had agreed to teach advanced anatomy at the institute. The two were bent over a tablet, examining what appeared to be brain scans with mutual fascination. She's thriving already, Daniel observed. And she's not the only one out there with this kind of potential. We've received nearly 300 applications in the past month alone. 300? Morrison seemed surprised. From children with legitimate medical knowledge? About half seem promising, Daniel confirmed. Children of doctors who, like Sarah Thompson, shared their knowledge. Kids who taught themselves through online resources, or who've been informally apprenticed in family practices or clinics. There's even a 10-year-old from Minnesota who's been assisting his grandfather, a rural doctor, for 3 years, because there's no one else to help in their remote community. Extraordinary, Morrison murmured, and all this talent, just waiting to be recognized and nurtured. The rest of the reception continued successfully, with even some skeptics warming to the concept after touring the facilities and speaking with the Institute's impressive staff. Daniel moved through the crowd with practiced ease, addressing concerns, answering questions, and building the alliances he knew would be crucial in the coming months. As the event wound down, Daniel found Olivia and Lily sitting together in a quiet corner, baby Michael sleeping peacefully in Olivia's arms. The sight of them, his new family in all its unconventional glory, filled him with a profound sense of purpose. Well, he said, sitting beside them, I think we can call today a success. Senator Preston didn't look convinced, Olivia observed, gently rocking Michael. She'll come around, Daniel replied confidently, especially after she sees what our students can accomplish. Lily looked up from the medical journal she'd been reading. When do the other students arrive? The selection committee makes its final decisions next week, Daniel told her. You'll have classmates within the month. Good, Lily said with a decisive nod. I've been preparing welcome packets for them, information about the institute, medical terminology flashcards, and some notes on the best ways to memorize the cranial nerves. Daniel and Olivia exchanged amused glances over her head. For all her extraordinary medical knowledge, Lily was still, in many ways, a child. Eager for friends who shared her interests and understood her unusual passion. There's something else we wanted to discuss with you, Lily, Olivia said gently. As you know, Daniel and I are your legal guardians now, but we've been thinking about making that arrangement more permanent. Lily looked up, her expression carefully neutral, though her fingers tightened slightly on the journal. You mean adoption? Daniel nodded. Only if you're comfortable with the idea. We would never want to replace your mother's memory. Mom would like you, Lily said after a thoughtful pause. Both of you. She always said that when you find good people in this world, you should hold on to them. She took a deep breath. I think I would like to be adopted if you're sure. We're sure, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. You're already part of our family, Lily. This would just make it official. As they sat together in the gleaming atrium of the institute that would change countless lives, Daniel reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this moment. A chance encounter on a freezing Manhattan sidewalk. A child with remarkable gifts. A connection that spanned years and reached beyond loss to create something new and hopeful. What none of them could know was that their fledgling institute would soon face its greatest challenge. One that would test not only its legitimacy, but the very bonds of their newly formed family. And that Lily Thompson, soon to be Lily Carter, would stand at the center of a controversy that would captivate the nation and change the course of medical education forever. 3 months after the institute's opening, Lily sat in the advanced anatomy laboratory with her 5 fellow students, each absorbed in the task before them. Under the watchful eye of Dr. Chen, they were practicing suturing techniques on specially designed synthetic skin models. Excellent tension control, Lily, Dr. Chen remarked, examining Lily's neat stitches. And Noah, your spacing is much more consistent today. Noah Wilson, A serious 10-year-old from the rural Minnesota town Daniel had mentioned beamed at the praise. The son and grandson of country doctors, Noah had been assisting with basic procedures in his grandfather's clinic since he was 6, driven by necessity in their medically underserved community. "Ethan, remember to maintain your angle," Dr. Chen continued, moving to the next student. Ethan Rivera, at 12, the oldest of the group, adjusted his grip on the instruments. Once a volunteer at his mother's free clinic in the Bronx, Ethan had taught himself medical Spanish to help translate for patients before discovering his own aptitude for diagnosis. The other students, twins Maya and Mia Jackson, 9-year-old daughters of emergency room nurses from Chicago, and Zoe Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen, an 8-year-old math prodigy whose interest in medicine had been sparked during her own heart surgery, were progressing at their own paces, each bringing unique backgrounds and strengths to the program. "Let's take a break," Dr. Chen announced. 15 minutes, then we'll move on to different suturing patterns." As the children set down their instruments and removed their gloves, Lily glanced through the glass wall of the laboratory to where Daniel was conducting a tour for a group of visitors. Even from a distance, she could tell by his formal posture and tight smile that these weren't friendly guests. "That's the accreditation committee," Zoe whispered, following Lily's gaze. With her uncanny ability to absorb information, Zoe had memorized the names and faces of everyone associated with the institute, including its opponents, and Senator Preston is with them. Lily nodded, watching as the group examined the laboratory from outside, their expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed disapproval. Senator Preston, a tall woman with iron-gray hair and a perpetual frown, was taking notes on a tablet while firing questions at Daniel. "She doesn't like us," Noah said matter-of-factly, coming to stand beside Lily. "My grandpa says she thinks kids should be playing, not learning medicine." "We do play," Maya pointed out, her twin nodding in agreement. "We had 2 hours of recreation time yesterday and art class this morning." "That's not what she means," Ethan explained, his voice carrying the world weariness of a child who had grown up too quickly in a tough neighborhood. "She thinks what we're doing is wrong, that we're being used." Lily bristled at this. In the 3 months since the institute had opened, she had never felt more right about anything in her life. Here, surrounded by peers who understood her passion and mentors who nurtured her abilities rather than dismissing them, she was thriving. The adoption had been finalized a month earlier, making her officially Lily Thompson Carter. Olivia had suggested keeping her mother's name as part of her legal identity, a gesture that had meant more to Lily than she could express. Baby Michael, now approaching 8 months, had developed an attachment to his new big sister, lighting up whenever she entered the room. Dr. Chen clapped her hands, drawing the students' attention back to their lesson. "Let's return to our stations. Today's skills may seem basic, but mastering them could mean the difference between a good outcome and a poor one for future patients." As Lily returned to her station, she noticed the tour group had moved on, though Senator Preston lingered, watching the children with an inscrutable expression. Lily met her gaze directly, unwavering, before turning her full attention back to her work. Later that afternoon, as Lily was completing her daily journal entry, a psychological exercise recommended by Dr. Winters to help the students process their experiences, Daniel knocked on the door of the study room. "May I come in?" he asked, though his troubled expression suggested this wasn't a casual visit. "Of course," Lily replied, saving her digital journal entry and closing the tablet. "Is everything okay? You look worried." Daniel smiled faintly. Of all the children at the institute, Lily remained the most perceptive, often reading emotions that adults tried to conceal. "The accreditation committee has some concerns." "About us," Lily stated rather than asked. "Yes," Daniel confirmed, taking a seat beside her. "Senator Preston in particular is pushing for a formal hearing before the Senate Health Committee next month." Lily considered this. What would that mean for the institute? "It means we'll have to defend our program publicly," Daniel explained. "Answer questions about our methods, our safeguards, our results." "But we've only been open for 3 months," Lily pointed out. "We don't have long-term results yet." "Exactly," Daniel said, "which is why they're pushing for the hearing now, before we can demonstrate significant success." Lily's brow furrowed in concentration. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Daniel hesitated. "Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss with you. The committee has requested that you testify." "Me?" Lily's eyes widened slightly. "Why me specifically?" Because you're the Institute's first student and because your story, delivering Michael on that sidewalk, has become public knowledge. They want to question you about your experiences here and your background. They want to see if I've been exploited, Lily translated bluntly. If I'm being pushed too hard or missing out on childhood. Daniel nodded, not bothering to sugarcoat it. He and Lily had established a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. Yes, and they'll probably ask about your mother too. A shadow passed over Lily's face at the mention of her mother, but she squared her small shoulders. I'll do it. I'll tell them the truth about what this place means to me. It won't be easy, Daniel warned. These hearings can be intimidating, and some of the questions might feel invasive. I've faced worse, Lily said simply, and Daniel was reminded again of everything this child had already endured in her short life. The following weeks were a flurry of preparation. While maintaining their regular curriculum, the Institute's staff worked with Lily to prepare her for the hearing. Dr. Winters conducted mock interviews, teaching Lily techniques to manage anxiety and respond to challenging questions. Dr. Morrison coached her on medical terminology that might arise, ensuring she could explain complex concepts in accessible language. The night before they were scheduled to fly to Washington, Lily found herself unable to sleep. She wandered from her bedroom in the Carter penthouse to the large living room window that overlooked Central Park, now blanketed in late October frost. Can't sleep? Olivia's gentle voice came from behind her. Lily turned to see her adoptive mother cradling a sleeping Michael. Just thinking about tomorrow. Olivia joined her at the window. It's okay to be nervous, you know. I would be terrified to testify before Congress at any age, let alone 8 years old. I'm not afraid of the questions, Lily said after a moment. I'm afraid of not being believed, of people thinking I'm just repeating what I've been told to say. Ah, Olivia nodded in understanding. Well, I can tell you from experience that authenticity is something you can't fake. And you, Lily Carter, are one of the most authentic people I've ever met, child or adult. Lily smiled faintly. Do you think Mom would be proud of what we're doing with the Institute? It was the first time Lily had directly asked Olivia about Sarah Thompson, though she spoke of her often with Daniel, who had at least met her. Based on everything you've told me about her and what Daniel has said, Olivia replied thoughtfully, I think she would be immensely proud, not just of the Institute, but of you. Your courage, your dedication, your compassion. Lily nodded, her eyes fixed on the distant city lights. Sometimes I worry that I'm forgetting her. Her voice, the way she laughed. But then I'll be learning something new in class, and I'll remember her teaching me the same thing, and it's like she's there again. Olivia shifted Michael to one arm and put her other around Lily's shoulders. She is there, in everything you do, and tomorrow when you speak to that committee, she'll be with you. The next morning, the Carter family and a small team from the Institute boarded Daniel's private jet for Washington. Lily wore a simple navy blue dress with a white collar, professional yet age-appropriate, selected carefully to strike the right balance for the hearing. The Senate committee room was imposing, with high ceilings, dark wood paneling, and tiered seating that seemed designed to intimidate those testifying. Cameras from major networks were positioned strategically, and the gallery was filled with journalists, medical professionals, and curious onlookers. Daniel testified first, presenting the Institute's mission, methodology, and preliminary results. He was followed by Dr. Morrison and Dr. Winters, who addressed the academic and psychological aspects of the program. Throughout their testimony, Senator Preston and her allies on the committee asked pointed questions about child labor laws, academic pressure, and the ethics of accelerated medical education. Finally, it was Lily's turn. As she took her seat at the witness table, a hush fell over the room. Even Senator Preston seemed momentarily taken aback by the small figure now facing the committee with composed dignity. Please state your name for the record, the committee chairman requested. Lily Thompson Carter, she replied clearly, her voice carrying through the microphone. And you are a student at the Carter Institute for Gifted Medical Education, is that correct? Yes, sir, I was the first student enrolled. Senator Preston leaned forward. Miss Carter, you're 8 years old now, is that right? Yes, Senator. Don't you think that's rather young to be studying advanced medical procedures? Wouldn't you rather be playing with dolls or watching cartoons like other children your age? A ripple of murmurs ran through the gallery at the condescending question. Lily took a breath before responding. Senator, I do play with dolls sometimes, anatomically correct ones that help me study body systems, and I watch educational programs about medicine rather than cartoons. But that's my choice. It's what interests me. Is it really your choice? Preston pressed. Or has Mr. Carter, your adoptive father and the founder of this institute, influenced what interests you? Lily's blue eyes flashed with a momentary spark of indignation, quickly controlled. My interest in medicine began long before I met Mr. Carter, Senator. My mother was Dr. Sarah Thompson. She taught me medicine from the time I could understand it. When she became ill, she intensified those lessons because she knew she wouldn't be there to guide me as I grew up. The mention of her mother's illness softened some faces on the committee, but Preston remained unmoved. And you were how old when your mother passed away? 6, Senator. So your medical training came from a terminally ill woman teaching a kindergartner, Preston summarized dismissively. And now you're being showcased as some kind of medical prodigy to promote Mr. Carter's experimental institute. Before Lily could respond, another committee member intervened. Senator Preston, I remind you that the witness is a child. Please keep your questions respectful. Preston nodded curtly, though her expression remained skeptical. Miss Carter, do you understand that most children your age are learning basic arithmetic and simple reading, not surgical techniques? I understand that, Senator, Lily replied calmly. I also understand that every child is different. Some 8-year-olds are musical prodigies who perform with symphonies. Others are math geniuses who attend college classes. My gift happens to be medicine. The Carter Institute doesn't try to make average children into doctors. It helps those of us who already have this knowledge and passion to develop properly under appropriate supervision. Her articulate response drew approving nods from several committee members, and even some journalists in the gallery were visibly impressed. As the questioning continued, Lily maintained her composure, answering with a combination of childlike directness and surprising technical accuracy when medical topics arose. Finally, a senator from California asked what would prove to be the most significant question of the hearing. Lily, if the committee were to rule against the institute and shut it down, what would that mean for you personally? Lily considered the question carefully. It would mean returning to a world where my abilities are seen as strange or impossible rather than valuable, where I'd have to hide what I know instead of using it to help others, where I'd have to wait another decade or more before anyone would take me seriously. She paused, then added quietly, it would be like telling a bird not to fly because most creatures walk. The simple but profound analogy resonated through the chamber. Even Senator Preston seemed momentarily at a loss for words. As the hearing concluded for the day, media commentators were already declaring Lily's testimony a turning point in the public perception of the Institute. Outside the hearing room, as they navigated through reporters shouting questions, Daniel squeezed Lily's shoulder gently. You were extraordinary in there. I just told the truth, Lily said, suddenly looking every bit her 8 years as fatigue from the intense day caught up with her. Sometimes, Daniel replied, that's the most powerful thing anyone can do. The morning after the hearing, Lily's testimony was front-page news. Medical prodigy defends controversial institute, declared the Washington Post. 8-year-old stuns Senate committee with medical knowledge, read the New York Times headline. Cable news channels ran clips of her composed responses to Senator Preston's questioning, with commentators marveling at her poise and articulation. As the Carter family prepared to return to New York, Daniel received an urgent call from Margaret, his assistant, who had remained at the institute. Sir, there's been an incident at Rockefeller Center, she said, her voice tense. A structural collapse at the ice rink. Multiple injuries reported. Emergency services are overwhelmed. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. Where exactly? The eastern side of the plaza. A decorative archway collapsed onto the ice. At least 20 people injured, many of them children on a school outing. Daniel looked at Lily, who was watching his face carefully, already sensing something was wrong. We're on our way back, he told Margaret. Keep me updated. As he ended the call, Olivia approached with Michael in her arms. What's happened? Daniel explained the situation quickly. We need to get back to New York as soon as possible. Can I help? Lily asked, her expression suddenly focused and serious, the same look she'd had on that December morning when she delivered Michael. Daniel hesitated. After yesterday's testimony, highlighting the Institute's careful supervision of its young students, Allowing Lily near an actual emergency scene seemed potentially problematic, yet he knew better than anyone what she was capable of. "Let's get home first," he said diplomatically, "then we'll assess the situation." The flight back to New York was tense, with Daniel receiving regular updates about the accident. By the time they landed, the situation had escalated. The city's trauma centers were at capacity, and emergency responders were struggling with the volume of injuries, ranging from minor cuts to critical crush wounds. Their driver met them at the airport with grim news. "The traffic into Manhattan is completely gridlocked, sir. Emergency vehicles can barely get through." Daniel made a quick decision. "Take us to the Institute first." When they arrived, they found the Institute in a state of controlled chaos. Dr. Morrison had already mobilized staff and resources, converting teaching spaces into treatment areas. "We've received approval to function as an auxiliary treatment center," Morrison explained as they entered. "The city's emergency management office is desperate for additional medical capacity, especially for pediatric cases." "What about the other students?" Olivia asked, concerned. "They're in the secure area with Dr. Winters and their caregivers," Morrison assured her. "We're maintaining appropriate boundaries." Daniel nodded approval, then noticed Lily had slipped away during their conversation. He found her in the supply room, efficiently assembling medical kits. "Lily," he began carefully, "I understand you want to help, but after yesterday's hearing, we need to be especially careful about appearances," Lily finished for him, not looking up from her task. "About whether I'm being exploited or put in harmful situations." "Yes," Daniel acknowledged. Lily finally paused and looked up at him. "There are children hurt out there, real children who need help, not theoretical ones that senators worry about in hearings." Before Daniel could respond, Dr. Chen entered the supply room. "The first ambulances are arriving, mostly minor injuries being diverted here, to free up hospital space for the critical cases." Lily looked expectantly at Daniel, who found himself at a crossroads. Every instinct as her guardian told him to protect her from the chaotic scene unfolding. Yet he also recognized that restricting her ability to help would contradict everything the Institute stood for, and everything Lily herself had testified about the day before. "You can assist with triage and basic first aid," he said finally, "under direct supervision, and only for patients with minor injuries. Dr. Chen will assign you specifically." Relief and determination flashed across Lily's face. "Thank you." Within minutes, the Institute's atrium had transformed into an emergency treatment center. Medical staff directed patients to different areas based on injury severity, while administrative staff coordinated with emergency services. Olivia had taken Michael to the family's private quarters, away from the commotion, and returned to help with administrative tasks. As promised, Dr. Chen assigned Lily to a station handling minor lacerations and contusions. Under the watchful eye of a certified trauma nurse, Lily cleaned wounds, applied appropriate dressings, and helped calm frightened children, many close to her own age. "It doesn't even hurt when she does it," one young boy told his mother, as Lily carefully cleaned a cut on his forehead. "She explained everything first, so I wasn't scared." The mother watched in amazement as this child doctor worked with gentle efficiency. "Are you really 8 years old?" she asked Lily. "Yes," Lily replied simply, securing a butterfly closure on the boy's wound. "But I've been studying medicine since I was 4. Word of the young medical prodigy spread quickly among the patients. Some were initially skeptical, but Lily's quiet competence and knowledge quickly earned their trust. The other institute students, though kept from direct patient care, helped by organizing supplies and providing comfort items to waiting families. Several hours into the crisis, as the initial surge began to subside, a commotion at the entrance drew attention. Senator Preston, who had apparently flown back from Washington on the same day, strode into the atrium, accompanied by aides and a film crew. "I received reports that children are treating patients here," she announced loudly, scanning the room until her gaze landed on Lily, who was finishing bandaging a young girl's arm. "This is exactly the type of exploitation I warned about in yesterday's hearing." Daniel moved quickly to intercept the senator. "Senator Preston, this is a designated emergency facility during a city crisis. All our students are working under direct professional supervision, handling only appropriate cases. You're using a disaster to showcase these children," Preston accused, "getting around proper protocols in the name of emergency." Before Daniel could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. Senator, with all due respect, you're interfering with an active medical response. Dr. James Harrington, the city's health commissioner, had arrived minutes earlier to check on the auxiliary facility. A tall, distinguished man with decades of experience in emergency medicine, Harrington had initially been skeptical of the Carter Institute, but had grudgingly approved its use today out of necessity. "Commissioner Harrington," Preston acknowledged, slightly taken aback. "Surely you don't condone children providing medical treatment." "What I've observed today," Harrington said carefully, "is an organized professional response to a mass casualty incident. The young students here are providing only basic care under constant supervision, allowing our trained professionals to focus on more serious cases." He gestured toward where Lily had returned to her station, deliberately ignoring the disruption as she focused on her next patient, an elderly woman with a sprained wrist. "Furthermore," Harrington continued, "the specialized pediatric knowledge of this facility has been invaluable. The children we've diverted here have received excellent care in an environment designed for their needs." Preston's camera crew had been filming throughout this exchange, but the footage was clearly not capturing the narrative she had expected. Instead of finding exploitation, they were documenting a well-organized emergency response where the Institute's unique approach was proving its worth. "I'd like to speak with some of these children," Preston insisted. "Ensure they're not being coerced." "This is neither the time nor place," Daniel said firmly. "These students are focused on helping others right now. If you wish to conduct interviews afterward, we can arrange that through proper channels, with parental consent and psychological support present." Commissioner Harrington nodded agreement. "Senator, I must insist that you allow this facility to continue its operations without disruption. You're welcome to observe, but interviews will have to wait." Recognizing she had lost this round, Preston reluctantly agreed to observe quietly. As she moved to a corner of the atrium with her aides, Daniel caught Lily watching the exchange with interest before returning her attention to her patient. Throughout the afternoon and into the evening, the Institute continued to treat patients diverted from overcrowded hospitals. By nightfall, the flow had slowed to a trickle, and staff began the process of cleaning up and restoring the space to its educational purpose. The students, including Lily, had been relieved of their duties as professional staff took over the remaining cases. They gathered in the Institute's dining hall, tired but animated as they shared their experiences of the day. "I helped organize all the supply kits," Zoe was saying proudly, "and I memorized every inventory sheet so I could tell the nurses exactly where to find things. We helped with the little kids in the waiting area," Maya and Mia explained, describing how they had used their knowledge of developmental psychology to keep frightened children calm. Noah and Ethan had assisted with translation for non-English speaking patients, their language skills proving unexpectedly valuable in the diverse city. As the children compared notes, Commissioner Harrington entered the dining hall with Daniel. The students immediately fell silent, straightening in their seats at the presence of the health official. "I wanted to thank you all personally," Harrington said, his formal tone softening as he addressed the children. "What I witnessed today has given me much to reconsider about this institute and its approach." Lily, who had been quietly eating soup at the end of the table, looked up with interest. "When Mr. Carter first proposed this program," Harrington continued, "I was among its strongest opponents. I believed children had no place in medical practice, regardless of their intellectual capabilities." He paused, glancing at Daniel. "I was wrong." The simple admission hung in the air for a moment before Harrington continued. "Today I saw not exploitation, but empowerment. Not children being forced into adult roles, but young people using their unique gifts to help others in a structured, appropriate environment." He looked directly at Lily now. "I saw the future of medicine, and it's brighter than I imagined." The commissioner's endorsement marked a turning point for the Institute. By morning, news coverage of the Rockefeller Center accident included extensive footage of the Carter Institute's response, with medical experts and emergency management officials praising the innovative approach that had helped the city handle the crisis. Senator Preston's attempt to expose exploitation had backfired spectacularly, instead showcasing exactly what Lily had described in her testimony: gifted children using their abilities to make a genuine difference under appropriate guidance and protection. In the weeks that followed, the Senate committee voted to support the Institute's continued operation, with recommended guidelines that largely matched protocols Daniel had already implemented. applications from potential students doubled, and inquiries came from medical institutions around the country interested in establishing similar programs. For Lily, however, the most significant moment came a month after the accident, when a letter arrived at the institute addressed to her personally. Opening it cautiously, she found a handwritten note from the elderly woman whose wrist she had treated, a retired nurse named Eleanor Jenkins. "Dear Lily," the letter read, "I've been a nurse for over 50 years, and I never thought I'd see the day when an 8-year-old would treat my injury. But you did so with more care, patience and skill than many professionals I've worked with. Your mother would be proud. Thank you for carrying her legacy forward." Enclosed with the note was a vintage stethoscope, polished to a soft gleam. "This was mine throughout my career," Eleanor had written. "Now it belongs to the future of medicine." Lily traced her fingers over the worn instrument, feeling a connection not just to the kind nurse who had sent it, but to her mother and to generations of healers before her. In that moment, all the challenges, the hearings, the criticism and the doubt fell away. This was why she did what she did. Not to prove anything to senators or critics, but to help people one patient at a time. As she carefully placed the stethoscope around her neck, Lily caught her reflection in the window. A small girl with serious blue eyes and her mother's determined expression. For the first time since Sarah Thompson's passing, Lily felt completely certain of her path forward. 4 years passed with remarkable swiftness. The Carter Institute for Gifted Medical Education expanded from its original 6 students to 32, ranging in age from 7 to 15. The once controversial program had become a respected innovator in medical education, with similar institutes opening in Chicago, Houston, and Los Angeles, all following the Carter model of rigorous standards, psychological support, and age-appropriate advancement. Lily, now 12, had grown into a poised preteen whose reputation extended far beyond the institute. Her natural academic abilities had accelerated her studies to the equivalent of a second-year medical student, though Daniel and the institute's staff remained careful to balance her education with normal developmental experiences. On a bright spring morning, Lily sat in Daniel's office reviewing the agenda for an upcoming medical education conference where she would be presenting alongside Dr. Morrison. At 12, she was tall for her age, with Sarah Thompson's striking blue eyes and dark hair typically pulled back in a practical ponytail. She still carried her mother's stethoscope, now somewhat small for her growing frame, but treasured nonetheless. "Are you nervous about the presentation?" Daniel asked, watching as she made notes on her tablet. Lily looked up with a small smile. "Not about the presentation itself. I've done enough of those, but this is the first international conference where I'm speaking. There will be medical educators from 30 countries who will all be impressed by your insights on adaptive learning techniques," Daniel assured her. "Your research on how to identify and nurture medical aptitude in children has already changed how programs are structured." Before Lily could respond, Daniel's phone rang with Margaret's distinctive tone for urgent matters. He answered immediately, his expression growing serious as he listened. "Where?" he asked, already rising from his desk. "How many?" "Yes, put the facility on standby protocol. We'll be ready." As he ended the call, Lily was already gathering her materials, recognizing the signs of an emergency. In the 4 years since the Rockefeller Center incident, the Institute had been called upon several times to assist during major emergencies, earning a reputation as an invaluable community resource. "What happened?" she asked calmly. "Ferry accident at Battery Park," Daniel explained. "A vessel collided with the dock during landing. Multiple injuries, many foreign tourists. They're activating all available medical facilities in Lower Manhattan." Lily nodded, her mind already shifting to emergency protocols. "I'll alert the student response team." The Institute had developed a carefully structured emergency response system that allowed its students to assist during crises while maintaining appropriate supervision and limitations based on age and skill level. Lily, as the most advanced student, served as coordinator for the younger children, working directly under Dr. Chen's supervision. Within 30 minutes, the Institute was ready to receive patients. The response had become almost routine, converting learning spaces to treatment areas, organizing supplies, preparing documentation systems. The original students, now the senior cohort, moved with practiced efficiency, while newer students took their assigned support roles. Noah, now 14 and nearly as tall as Dr. Morrison, had developed expertise in emergency triage. The Jackson twins specialized in pediatric care, particularly adept at treating frightened children. Ethan, approaching 16 and preparing for early college admission, had become skilled in diagnostic imaging analysis. "First ambulances arriving in 5 minutes," announced Dr. Chen, reviewing updates on her tablet. "Mostly walking wounded. The critical cases are going to downtown hospitals." Lily completed her check of the pediatric station and moved to the triage area, where Noah was organizing color-coded assessment forms. "We've got translation needs," he told her. The ferry was carrying tourists from multiple countries. Zoe's handling Mandarin and Japanese, but we'll need help with European languages. "I can cover French and basic German," Lily offered, "and Ethan's Spanish is better than mine." As they finalized assignments, the first patients began to arrive. Disoriented tourists with cuts, bruises, and minor fractures. Many were separated from their travel companions, adding to their distress in an unfamiliar country. Lily moved between stations, translating where needed and assisting with basic procedures under supervision. 4 years of training had refined her already considerable skills, and while she maintained the methodical approach she'd always had, she'd developed a reassuring bedside manner that put patients at ease despite her youth. "You're really a doctor?" asked a French woman with a laceration on her arm, speaking in her native language as Lily cleaned the wound. "A student doctor," Lily replied in fluent French, a skill she'd developed knowing it would be valuable for international medical work. "But I've been studying for many years. This cut isn't deep, but it will need a few stitches." As she worked, explaining each step of the procedure to the woman, Lily noticed Daniel observing from across the room. He gave her an approving nod before turning his attention to a group of officials who had just entered, representatives from the city's emergency management office, accompanied by a film crew and a familiar face that made Lily pause momentarily. Senator Eleanor Preston, now the chair of the Senate Health Committee, had undergone a remarkable transformation in her views on the Carter Institute. After the Rockefeller Center incident and subsequent successes, Preston had become one of the program's strongest advocates, championing legislation to support similar initiatives nationwide. The senator spotted Lily and approached after Lily had finished with her patient. "Miss Carter," Preston greeted her warmly. "Once again, your institute rises to the occasion." "Senator," Lily acknowledged with professional courtesy, "we're glad to help." Preston gestured to the film crew, who maintained a respectful distance. "We're documenting innovative emergency response systems for a congressional report. Your program is a key case study." "The students are the ones who deserve recognition," Lily replied, her natural modesty unchanged by years of acclaim. "They're all here because they want to make a difference." As if to illustrate her point, 8-year-old Max Reynolds, one of the newest students, approached with careful steps, carrying a tray of prepared bandage kits. "Lily," he said with the seriousness typical of the Institute's children, "Dr. Chen asked me to bring these to the suture station. Is that where you are?" "Perfect timing, Max," Lily said, taking the tray. "This is excellent preparation work." The boy beamed at her praise before noticing the senator. His eyes widened in recognition. All students learned about the Institute's history, including Preston's initial opposition and later support. "Hello, Senator," he said with formal politeness. "Are you here to see how we help during emergencies?" Preston crouched slightly to address him at eye level. "I am indeed. And what's your role today, young man?" "I'm a supply coordinator," Max explained seriously. "I'm not advanced enough for patient contact yet, but I can make sure the doctors have everything they need." "And that's extremely important," Preston assured him. "Every medical team needs good support staff." As Max hurried off to his next task, Preston straightened and turned back to Lily. "You've become quite the role model for these younger students." "I try to be," Lily acknowledged, "though sometimes it's strange to be seen that way when I'm still learning myself." That balance, between student and teacher, between child and professional, is what makes this program so remarkable, Preston observed. "I'll admit I was wrong about your institute, completely wrong." Before Lily could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A new patient had arrived, a young boy, perhaps 10 years old, being carried by his frantic father. Unlike the other patients with relatively minor injuries, this child appeared critically ill rather than injured. "Help him, please," the father called out in heavily accented English. "He cannot breathe." Dr. Morrison rushed forward, directing them to an assessment room as he called for assistance. Lily, recognizing the urgency of the situation, excused herself from the senator and hurried to offer help. In the assessment room, the boy lay on the examination table, his breathing labored and his skin taking on a bluish tinge. His father explained in broken English that they had been near the ferry terminal but not on the vessel itself when the boy suddenly became ill. "Has he had anything to eat in the last hour?" Dr. Morrison asked as he examined the child. The father nodded frantically. "Yes, street food, a pretzel with... He struggled for the word. "Nuts?" Lily suggested, noticing the characteristic swelling around the boy's eyes and lips. "Did the pretzel have nuts on it?" Yes, nuts," the father confirmed. "He never had problem before with food." Dr. Morrison was already reaching for an epinephrine auto-injector, recognizing the signs of severe anaphylaxis. "It's an allergic reaction, severe one." As he prepared the injection, Lily spoke calmly to the boy in French, having recognized the father's accent. The child's eyes, wide with fear, fixed on her as she explained what was happening and what Dr. Morrison was about to do. "He understands now," she told Morrison. "He's ready." The epinephrine was administered, and for a tense moment, they watched for a response. The boy's breathing remained labored, his oxygen saturation dropping despite the intervention. "We need a second dose," Morrison decided, reaching for another auto-injector, "and call for an emergency transport to the hospital. This is beyond our scope here." As they waited for the second dose to take effect, Lily continued speaking softly to the child, monitoring his vital signs while translating for his increasingly distressed father. The boy's gaze remained locked on hers, finding reassurance in her calm presence amid his terror. Gradually, his breathing eased, and color began to return to his face. By the time the ambulance arrived to transport him to the hospital for further treatment, he was stable enough to manage a weak smile as Lily explained he would be going to another facility. "You saved him," the father said to Lily as paramedics prepared to move his son. "A child saving a child? It is miracle, not a miracle," Lily corrected gently. "Just good medical care and the right medication at the right time." After they departed, Lily returned to the main treatment area, where the pace had slowed as the final patients received care. Senator Preston approached her again, having witnessed the emergency response from a distance. "That was impressive work," Preston said. "Dr. Morrison told me you identified the allergic reaction before he did." Lily shrugged slightly. "I noticed the swelling pattern, and I could communicate with him directly, which helped." "You know," Preston said thoughtfully, "when we first met at that hearing 4 years ago, I thought Daniel Carter was exploiting vulnerable children for publicity. I couldn't have been more wrong. What he's built here, what you've all built together, is transforming medicine." "It's not just about medicine," Lily replied. "It's about recognizing that potential doesn't follow a standard timeline. Some children can play concert piano at 5 or solve complex equations at 6. We just happen to have an aptitude for healing." Preston nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I'm heading a new congressional initiative on medical education reform. We're looking at ways to create more flexible pathways into medicine for gifted individuals of all ages. I'd like you to consult on the project." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "Me, but I'm still a student." "A student with a unique perspective and 4 years of experience in precisely the type of program we're trying to develop," Preston pointed out. "Your insight would be invaluable." Before Lily could respond, Daniel joined them, having overheard the conversation. "It's an excellent opportunity, Lily, though we'd need to work it around your studies and development, of course." "Of course," Preston agreed quickly. "We're not looking to overwhelm her. Just periodic consultation, perhaps virtual meetings that wouldn't require travel to Washington." Lily considered the offer. 4 years ago, she had stood before Senator Preston's committee defending her right to learn medicine at her own pace. Now that same senator was asking for her help to extend similar opportunities to other gifted children nationwide. "I'd be honored to help," she said finally, "as long as it doesn't interfere with my clinical rotations. I'm starting pediatric emergency training next month." As the last patients departed and the institute staff began restoring the space to its educational configuration, Lily found herself drawn to the large window overlooking the Manhattan skyline. So much had changed since that frigid December morning, when she'd helped deliver Michael on a crowded sidewalk. The frightened orphan selling candy to survive had transformed into a confident young medical student with a loving family and a clear purpose. Yet some things remained constant. Her mother's stethoscope around her neck, the memory of Sarah Thompson guiding her hands and decisions, and the pure satisfaction that came from helping others in moments of crisis. Daniel came to stand beside her at the window, following her gaze across the city. "Penny, for your thoughts." "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Lily said. "Not just me, but all of us. The institute, the students, the whole concept of what's possible in medical education." "And we're just getting started," Daniel reminded her. "The first international branch opens in London next year. The research partnerships with major medical schools are expanding. And you," he smiled with paternal pride, "you're redefining what it means to be both a gifted child and a medical professional." Lily returned his smile, though her expression remained thoughtful. "I had a dream last night about Mum. She was showing me how to use a surgical instrument I'd never seen before, and when I looked up to ask her a question, it wasn't her anymore. It was me, grown up, teaching another child." Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your mother started something extraordinary when she shared her knowledge with you. Now you're carrying it forward, creating a legacy that will continue long after all of us." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the institute's atrium, Lily watched the younger students helping with cleanup, their faces bright with the satisfaction of having made a difference. Whatever challenges lay ahead, for her personally, for the institute, for the movement they had started, she faced them with the certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was born to do. 5 years later, the United Nations headquarters in New York hummed with anticipation. Delegates from 193 countries filled the General Assembly Hall for a special session on global health innovation. At the center of attention was the now 17-year-old Lily Carter, poised to address the Assembly on the transformative impact of the educational model she had helped pioneer. The Carter Institute had expanded beyond anyone's initial expectations, with 16 branches across 4 continents and over 500 gifted students receiving specialized medical education. What had begun as one man's gratitude for a child's intervention on a frozen Manhattan sidewalk had evolved into a global movement, revolutionizing how medical talent was identified and nurtured. Lily stood at the podium, a confident young woman on the cusp of adulthood. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, and she wore a professional navy suit that echoed the color of her striking blue eyes. Around her neck, visible above her collar, was her mother's stethoscope, now mounted as a pendant on a silver chain, a constant reminder of where her journey had begun. "Distinguished delegates, honored guests," she began, her voice clear and measured. 17 years ago, I was born to a brilliant emergency physician who knew she wouldn't live to see me grow up. Faced with that reality, my mother made an extraordinary choice: to compress years of medical education into the precious time we had left together. The vast hall was silent, hundreds of diplomats and health officials captivated by the poised young woman and her remarkable story. When she passed away, I was 6 years old with the medical knowledge of someone many years older. In most educational systems, this would have been treated as an oddity at best, or dismissed as impossible at worst. I would have been forced to wait more than a decade before anyone took my abilities seriously. Lily paused, glancing toward the front row where Daniel and Olivia sat with 15-year-old Michael and their youngest daughter, 7-year-old Sarah, named for the grandmother she had never met but whose legacy she carried forward. Instead, thanks to an unlikely chain of events and one man's vision, I found myself at the center of an educational revolution. The Carter Institute didn't create my medical knowledge. It recognized it, nurtured it, and provided the structure to develop it responsibly. On a large screen behind her, images appeared. Children of various ages engaged in medical education, working in laboratories, assisting in carefully supervised clinical settings, all with the focused expression of young people using their natural gifts. Today, similar programs exist in 28 countries, identifying children with exceptional medical aptitude and providing them with education tailored to their unique abilities. These aren't programs that push children to become doctors. They're programs that support children who already have the knowledge, passion, and calling to heal. In the audience, delegates from countries as diverse as Japan, Brazil, Kenya, and Sweden nodded in recognition. Each had established their own version of the Carter model, adapted to their cultural contexts, but maintaining the core principles of age-appropriate advancement, psychological support, and ethical oversight. The results speak for themselves, Lily continued. Institute graduates who have reached adulthood are now entering traditional medical schools with unprecedented foundations. They're becoming researchers making groundbreaking discoveries, clinicians bringing new perspectives to patient care, and educators transforming medical training for the next generation. The screen displayed statistics showing accelerated research timelines, improved patient outcomes, and innovative approaches to healthcare challenges, all stemming from the unique perspectives of these unusually prepared young medical minds. But perhaps the most significant impact has been in underserved communities, Lily said, her passion evident as she reached the heart of her address. Institute branches in developing regions have created pipelines of medical talent in places where healthcare infrastructure has historically been limited. Children who might never have accessed quality education are now becoming healthcare leaders in their own communities. Images appeared of institute branches in rural India, Central Africa, and remote South American regions, places where traditional medical education systems struggled to establish footholds, but where the flexible, resource-efficient Carter model had flourished. These young people aren't just learning medicine, they're transforming it, bringing fresh perspectives unbound by conventional limitations. Their youth, rather than being a handicap, allows them to imagine solutions that experienced practitioners might overlook. Lily's gaze swept across the assembly, making brief eye contact with delegates from various countries. Today, I'm proud to announce that the United Nations World Health Organization and the Carter Foundation are launching a global initiative to establish 50 new institutes over the next decade, with particular focus on regions with critical healthcare shortages. Applause rippled through the hall at this announcement. On the screen, a map appeared showing the planned locations spanning every continent. This initiative will be supported by a new scholarship fund, ensuring that economic circumstances never prevent a gifted child from developing their healing potential. And a digital platform will connect students across all institutes, creating a worldwide network of young medical minds collaborating across borders and cultures. As Lily outlined the details of the initiative, Daniel watched with quiet pride. The frightened 7-year-old selling candy on a winter day had blossomed into this poised young woman who now commanded the attention of world leaders. Though he had provided the resources and infrastructure, it was Lily's unwavering dedication and natural gifts that had truly driven the Institute's success. I stand before you today as living proof that potential doesn't always follow conventional timelines, Lily continued, moving toward her conclusion. The girl who delivered a baby on a Manhattan sidewalk at age 7 is now preparing to enter Harvard Medical School's accelerated MD-PhD program at 17. She touched the stethoscope pendant at her neck, a gesture those close to her recognized as her connection to Sarah Thompson's memory. But I am just one story. Across the world, there are children with extraordinary gifts waiting to be recognized, not just in medicine but in every field of human endeavor. Our responsibility is to create educational systems flexible enough to nurture these gifts whenever and wherever they appear. Lily's voice grew stronger with conviction. Imagine a world where no potential is wasted because it emerged too early or in an unexpected place, where a child born in a remote village with an intuitive understanding of medicine doesn't have to wait 20 years to use that gift to save lives in her community, where brilliance is measured not by age or origin, but by capability and compassion. The assembly hall was utterly silent, hundreds of delegates hanging on her every word. This is the world the Carter Institute envisions, not just for medicine, but as a model for identifying and nurturing exceptional talent in every field. A world where the question isn't, are you old enough? But rather, what do you know and how can we help you use that knowledge to make a difference? As Lily concluded her address, the delegates rose in a standing ovation that continued for several minutes. Representatives from countries that had once been skeptical of the Carter model were now among the most enthusiastic supporters, having witnessed its success in their own regions. After the formal session, a reception was held in one of the UN's elegant meeting rooms overlooking the East River. Lily found herself surrounded by health ministers, education officials, and foundation representatives eager to discuss implementation details for the new initiative. Miss Carter, the health minister of Kenya approached her. "Your institute in Nairobi has transformed our pediatric care landscape. Children who begin in your program are now staffing rural clinics that previously had no medical coverage at all." "The students deserve all the credit," Lily replied with characteristic modesty. "We simply provide the structure and opportunity." As the conversations continued, Lily noticed a small commotion near the entrance to the reception. A group of children ranging in age from about 8 to 15 was being escorted into the room by UN security staff. Each wore formal attire with a small pin bearing the Carter Institute logo. Daniel appeared at her side, smiling at her confused expression. "Surprise," he said softly. "Student representatives from every Carter Institute worldwide. They flew in for your address and the announcement." Lily's composed diplomatic facade momentarily cracked as emotion swept over her. These children, 32 of them from 16 different countries, represented everything she had worked for since that first day at the original institute. A small girl, no more than 8, broke away from the group and approached Lily with determined steps that reminded her forcefully of herself at that age. The child wore a traditional Maasai beaded collar over her formal dress, her dark eyes serious and focused. "Miss Carter," she said in careful English, "I am Nafula from the Nairobi Institute. I wanted to thank you personally." She extended a small hand formally. "Before the institute came to Kenya, I was just a girl who knew how to help when people in my village became sick. Now, I am a medical student with a future." Lily knelt to the child's level, taking her hand in both of her own. "You were never just anything, Nafula. The knowledge you had was already valuable. We just helped others see it." As Lily spoke with each of the student representatives, she was struck by the diversity of their backgrounds and experiences, yet the remarkable similarity in their stories. Children with natural healing instincts who had found recognition and purpose through the institutes. Later, as the reception wound down, Lily found a quiet moment with her family near the large windows overlooking the New York skyline. 15-year-old Michael, now taller than his sister, and showing promise as a biomedical engineer rather than a physician, stood beside her. "Pretty impressive speech, sis," he said with the casual admiration of a teenage brother. "Hard to believe you once delivered me on a sidewalk." "That was just the beginning," Lily replied, smiling at the brother whose birth had changed the course of her life. "Though I'm still amazed Dad didn't faint." Daniel laughed, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "I was too terrified to faint, and too in awe of this tiny girl taking command of the situation." Little Sarah, who had inherited her mother's artistic talent rather than any medical inclination, looked up from the drawing she was creating on her tablet. "Will I get to go to a special school for art like Lily goes to for medicine?" "If that's your passion, absolutely," Olivia assured her, stroking her daughter's hair. "That's what we've learned from Lily's journey. Every gift deserves the right environment to flourish." As they gazed out at the city below, Daniel reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this moment. A chance encounter during a medical emergency, the discovery of an unusual child with remarkable abilities, a program born of gratitude that had grown beyond anyone's expectations. "Harvard next fall," he said to Lily. "Are you ready?" Lily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "More than ready. The Institute has given me an amazing foundation, but there's still so much to learn." "And after Harvard?" Olivia asked, though they had discussed her plans many times. "Global health policy," Lily replied without hesitation. "The institutes are changing how we educate gifted children in medicine, but there's still so much work to do in how we deliver healthcare worldwide." She paused, a familiar determination settling over her features. "Mom always said medicine shouldn't be a privilege, it should be a right. I intend to help make that a reality." As twilight fell over Manhattan, casting the skyline in shades of purple and gold, Lily thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a frightened orphan to a globally recognized advocate for educational innovation. She thought of her mother, Sarah Thompson, whose final gift to her daughter had been knowledge that saved countless lives. She thought of Daniel Carter, whose vision and resources had transformed personal gratitude into institutional change. And she thought of the hundreds of children now following paths similar to her own, their natural gifts recognized and cultivated, rather than dismissed or delayed. In her pocket, Lily carried a small worn photograph, Sarah Thompson in her white coat, smiling proudly at the camera with a 4-year-old Lily by her side, tiny fingers wrapped around a stethoscope too large for her small hands. It was her talisman, a reminder of where everything had begun. "You know," Daniel said quietly, as if reading her thoughts, "your mother once told me something I've never forgotten. It was the night Rebecca died, after she had done everything possible to save her. She said, 'Sometimes medicine fails, but compassion never should.'" Lily looked at him in surprise. "She used to say that to me, too." Daniel nodded. "I think about that often. How a chance remark from a doctor I met on the worst night of my life would eventually connect to a little girl who would save my son's life years later. How that connection would grow into something that's now helping children around the world." "Life's strange that way," Lily agreed, watching as the city lights began to twinkle in the gathering darkness. "The most important moments often don't announce themselves. They just happen, and it's what we build from them that matters." As they prepared to leave the reception, Lily took one last look at the assembled delegates and institute students mingling in the elegant UN chamber. From a singular act of intervention on a frozen sidewalk had grown a movement that was changing, not just how gifted children were educated, but how the world understood potential itself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Harvard preparations, institute expansions, policy initiatives. But tonight, surrounded by her family and the living embodiment of the dream they had built together, Lily Carter allowed herself a moment of pure satisfaction. Her journey, their journey, was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. As the Carter family departed the United Nations, a small girl from the Nairobi Institute watched them go, her eyes fixed on Lily's retreating figure. In her hand, she clutched a business card Lily had given her with a personal email address written on the back. "One day," Nafula whispered to herself, "I will build something important too." And in that moment, the true legacy of the Carter Institute, the passing of not just knowledge but purpose from one generation to the next, continued its quiet, powerful evolution.